morning, everyone. We've had a fair amount of rain over the last couple of days, have we? So, it's kind of interesting if you look at your lives, every day we're planning for something. There's always something that is going to happen that we have to make ourselves ready for. And so we prepare, whether it's, deciding what clothes you're going to wear in the morning, whether or not it's warming up as the girls do downstairs, which is kind of entertaining when you hear them downstairs doing the octaves up and down. It's kind of interesting. If you like, come early. You could go down and see them and hear them before church. It's something else. My wife and her team for the school downstairs, Lincoln Academy, they have been probably weeks in planning to make sure that the first day, goes as well as possible, and then all the follow-up days. There's constant planning, even for us as a church. We're always planning. Right now, we're starting to talk about Christmas, believe it or not, the living nativity. Who would have ever thought? Time has gone by so quickly. But all of those things require planning and preparation. If we don't plan and prepare properly, we're not going to be successful because it can't simply be all thrown together. I think in the very same way Jesus is saying that about being his disciple. I think it's exactly what Jesus is asking us. And the problem I had this week when I read this gospel, say on Tuesday or Wednesday, to start preparing for today, I found myself asking myself whether or not I have actually yet begun to be a disciple. There are so many parts and areas of my life that I'm not crazy about. They're imperfect. And I wish they could be different, and I wish I could be this perfect person, this perfect follower of Jesus that I would like to be, but honestly, there's this humanity part of me that gets in the way, and so those of you who know me, I'm not the most patient person in the world. I'm the one who's told to be still by people in the church, and I'm not looking at anyone specifically. I have foibles. I have situations and circumstances, that if I actually had begun and if I actually put my mind to it, could I overcome? To maybe by God's grace to some extent, yes. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the brokenness and the frailty that I have to carry. We all have it. We all have something in our lives that we're not crazy or happy about. But as you look at the world over the last couple of weeks especially, strike that, maybe the last year. If you look at the world and you see people of faith who declare specific tenets of faith and how they behave toward other individuals, you ask yourself, well, are they truly bearing witness to what Jesus has declared them to be or should be? See, you can't separate this Gospel of Luke from Luke's situation. There's a huge problem with Luke. See, Luke's writing around the year 80, which is 80, say about 60 or 70 years, probably 50-something years after the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So during this time period, during these 50 years, there is already the Roman occupation in Jerusalem, and Christians are already being sought after and persecuted and losing their lives for declaring themselves to be followers and believers in this Jesus. Jesus, during his time and during his active ministry, was not well received. His behavior disturbed people. His words disturbed people. But notice that what I'm saying first is his behavior. It's how he acted that really got the goat of leadership, both Roman authorities and also religious authorities, because Jesus hung around with and cared for and loved and embraced people that, according to the religious traditions of the day, should not be loved, should not be embraced. And so Jesus had no problem. You know the scriptures. He sat and ate with sinners and tax collectors. He hung out with prostitutes. And because of that, because of his actions, made him the recipient of so much ridicule. Because what they could not understand is the same thing you and I have a hard time understanding, is that this God doesn't care so much about what we are named or our brokenness or our frailty. He's more concerned simply that we are his. He's concerned about our heart. Jesus hung out with the sinners and the tax collectors and the prostitutes because their hearts were open to him. And so we believe, probably by being with Jesus and hanging around Jesus, that Jesus' personality and characteristics rubbed off on them. And so we do believe that many of those people, just like Matthew, turns away from being a tax collector and ends up following Jesus. Or in other cases, Zacchaeus, who's a tax collector as well, it doesn't say that he left being a tax collector, just that he would do it fairly and he would do it justly. He would do his job appropriately without tagging on more for himself. But in every one of those situations, there's been a change in people, their behaviors, their thoughts, their thinking. But I really have to ask us as a church, as a universal church, as people who have declared that we believe in this person of Jesus. And perhaps we have spent most of our life in a preparatory way, but have we, honest to goodness, actually begun to act as Jesus would act in our society today? Have we really taken to heart his example and his words? The thing that hit me this week was the part in Matthew's gospel, Matthew 25. Jesus says, you on, my right, come to me. Enter into the place that has been prepared for you from the beginning of all time. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was in prison, and you visited me. I was sick, and you came to visit. Right? And he goes through this list. And what do they say? When did we ever do that? And he says, whenever you have done it to the least, you've done it to me. And then on the other side, he throws them out. He casts them out. And they're saying, but Lord, we know you. We hung out with you. We would be in your presence. And he says, yes, but when I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me to drink. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was in prison, you didn't visit me. When I was sick, you didn't come to me. You are dismissed. And in a lot of ways, perhaps we believe simply by attending a church is enough, but it's really not. The one woman who called this weekend was, and she's right, we should have said that we were closed, and I do apologize again. But when I got off the phone and I was thinking to myself, and I would say that to all of us, is the fact that we did not gather here, did it stop us from giving worship and praise to God on a holy day? Did we really think that we had the day off from being a Christian? Because sometimes we equate what we do here as being the totality of what it means to be a follower of Christ. And I don't think that's the case. I think every single day when you and I are wandering around and walking around and encountering people, right? When we see people, even the people we live with, think about the people that you live with. How attentive are we to their presence in our life? I found myself thinking about that yesterday. We were wandering around with Donna's family. We were up in Poughkeepsie to see Grandma. And, we're walking around, and it becomes so second nature to simply have Donna in my life. It almost becomes so easy to forget. that she's in my life. Now, I admit, I stopped locking her up in the basement. I did, okay? I stopped doing that. I did. It's not good. Don't do that. But generally speaking, there's plenty of ways that we take advantage of one another. We do. We forget. We forget that one another is in our life. We do. And yet, at the same time, isn't that exactly what following Jesus is all about? That heightened sensitivity that every single person we meet, every single person we bump into, is in and of themselves Jesus. Not maybe. He says it is. He says every single person you encounter is your opportunity to touch me, to care for me, to respond to me. And I have to tell you, I think we hear that in this place, and we hear it in Scripture. Yesterday when we were up in Poughkeepsie, Donna and her family, Donna's Spanish, so they start speaking Spanish. Now, I'm okay for the first 10 minutes. I can keep up. The first 10 minutes of Spanish speaking, I'm pretty good. I'm putting words together. I get an idea. I'm really listening to see whether or not they're talking about me. That's what I'm most worried about, okay? Because the only reason I learned Spanish was because if Donna's going to yell at me, I have to know exactly what she's saying, okay? But anyway, we're up there, and so they slip off into their Spanish realm, and they are moving at speeds of language, and I don't even know how their tongue is staying in their mouth, and it's just going on, and forget it. So I turn on the TV, and there is this whole TV conversation, this show about, what do they call them, when a driver gets really aggressive. Road rage. Entire show on road rage. Videos that have been captured and watched. And honestly, it scared me. It scared me. Because over the stupidest little things, people are going at each other about even two cars coming down, one lane's closed, right? You go one for one, right, to merge in. Well, this guy didn't want to do the one for one. And so he literally pulls forward, jams on his brakes, and the guy behind him slams into the back of his truck. And this is all on, they have that camera that they put on their cars now, dash cams. Okay, everyone watches the show and everyone goes, ooh, ah, right? But I don't know, to me, it's so disturbing to think that we would allow any situation to drive any of us to the level of wanting to actually hurt somebody else, okay? And that's just in a neighborhood driving around. The Ukraine and Russia are still, right, two very Christian countries, right? President Putin had put in an Orthodox type chapel into his palace, right? Declares himself, and yet look at what's happening. And then our Jewish and Palestinian brothers and sisters. Our Jewish brothers and sisters feel that it is okay to displace 2 million people because they live in an area that's run by terrorists. So the answer to that is to remove them? I'm sorry, isn't this the culture that got uprooted in Poland and Czechoslovakia and were moved and pushed out of their places? I mean, the thought that they would be willing to or even think about that it is okay to do that to somebody else when it was done to them. And yet their tenets of faith and belief and charity are very similar to ours, very similar indeed. But how quickly we forget the God that created us and the characteristics of that God and what that God declares is needed of us. And so Luke is talking about an audience that is already mother against father, sister against brother, neighbor against neighbor, because some of them are believing that this Jesus is indeed risen from the dead and that this Jesus is the Messiah, and they are changing their lives to follow that Jesus. And because of that, there is hatred and animosity, and many of them are losing their lives. But you know what everyone's going to preach about today? This last sentence. Because we're a materialistic society. So this is where they're going to settle. Everyone's going to preach about the fact that in the same way, any one of you who does not renounce all of his possessions cannot be my disciple. No. What Jesus is talking about there isn't monetary or materialistic things to give away. He's talking about the things that shackle our hearts, the things that we hold on to with such our discriminations, our slight tendencies to racism, our fear of the homeless or people walking on the street. We all do it. We do. Those are the things that we hold on to that stops Jesus from being able to use us as his instrument to touch somebody else. It is. Those are the things, those are the possessions that are holding us back from a life that is meant to be filled with incredible grace and joy. And as a Christian church, I just wonder, we're still in a preparing way. We're preparing for this. We're going to be good disciples. We come to Sunday and we talk about this, and it's wonderful. But about action, you know? My son and I talked about this not too long ago. And I just said to him, I said, you know, Arthur, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I am so tired of talk. I'm just tired of talk. I'm tired of apologetics. I'm tired of using scripture to put one another down. I'm tired of using those types of forums to say who knows more than the other person and who could beat someone in an argument. I'm tired of it. It's time for action. And when we act, people will look at us strange. We may lose friends. We may lose relationships. But we're making a choice to follow the example of the Master, to be as much of Jesus as we can be, to allow ourselves to be flooded with grace, that our hands and our hearts become that of Jesus Christ. God bless you.